Hello, everyone. Here at Lenaro Connect in Budapest. I'm here with Robert Wolf, here with Yang Zhang, director of 96Boards and the technical lead of 96Boards, Amit Kucheria. We're here to just kind of talk to you a little bit about 96Boards. Yeah.
So you're just about to go to a session, right?
I am, yes.
And so it's a very busy time.
It is super busy, yes. We have a lot of activity going on.
So what kind of roles do you have?
So I'm technical lead, which means that I'm in charge of working with the partners to get the boards to market, including compliance, and in charge of the specification and make sure that the boards comply with the specification.
And you talk with all the chip makers, encourage them to make super cool 96 boards?
Yeah, I mean, that's right. So we're very happy to see the adoptions and the support from across the industry, all the SoC vendors have. And they're all very keen. And to a large extent, most of the Lenaro's existing members and to all, hopefully the future members are keen to enable the SoC on various form factor of 96 boards.
All right, that's cool. So what are we going to talk about here?
So I thought that we'd lay out a bunch of these 96 boards from different specifications, kind of point out some of the differences, possibly walk you through the evolution of 96 boards, the specification itself, and then talk about how 96 boards is kind of tackling some of its community efforts throughout this year, 2017. So as you can see here on the table, kind of a plethora of sizes and shapes. We have consumer edition boards right around here. You can see standard versions and expanded or extended. We have some IoT boards over here. Some new ones that were actually just announced in the keynote yesterday. And then we have some mezzanine products down here as well. Behind here are a little bit of some 3D printed cases, just kind of showing that the ecosystem is growing, some interesting things that the community is pushing out throughout last year.
And you've been talking about this in the open hours?
Yes. And so, we've mentioned open hours several times, and we will be doing a live show here in Budapest, but we also do a live broadcast every single week on Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Very good opportunity. It's kind of what I'd like to call the community's channel to get in touch with developers and anyone else around the world that wants to drive this effort forward.
You've had 42 episodes, right?
42 episodes so far.
Minimum 1 hour long of each will have.
So it's actually very fun. It's not formal at all. We just kind of sit there. Everyone pours a cup of coffee. We talk tech, gets into open source, Lenaro stuff, ARM. There's debates, fun times, and then mostly what it ends up happening is we just end up kind of answering questions and viewing how we want to kind of approach the advancement of 96
and
boards.
And this is mostly about 96 boards, all those episodes, open hours about 96 boards.
Mostly, yes.
Right.
But like I said, sometimes we just kind of kick back and have fun.
People share their hacks and share their problems as well.
What's been the response and the use so far, and where's it going with all these 96 boards?
So we started the first board.
Yeah.
The first board was the high key that was announced roughly about 2 years ago, which is right there, the high key.
We actually have the Circuit Co one right here, and then
So that's the original version, and then we moved to a different vendor, and so that's the high key. This was roughly 2 years ago, and you've seen that in 2 years we've evolved to a plethora of SoC vendors, different form factors. So that's an upcoming board from Qualcomm based on their 820C
This is
chip.
bigger.
Yes, so this is bigger
What does it
because
mean?
the specification allows for you an extended version of the specification where you can have Ethernet port on there and maybe other connectors that you might want to expose on there. So the original specification, if you see this is compatible up to here. So your mezzanines and your low-speed expansion connector and your high-speed expansion connectors are still in the same place, but it allows you more space to add on more connectors and expose more features of your SoC.
So this is is there SATA?
No SATA.
No SATA.
So this one's got PCIe though.
PCIe?
Yeah.
And this Ethernet and headphone jack.
Yeah, there's a headphone jack in there, and
So a lot of times what you end up with is I mean, for instance, like we could compare the Dragon Board 410C with the 820. And on the 410C, it's basically saying, okay, well, you know, 410 has these particular features. You can break out these particular aspects of the SoC. But with other chips, such as the 820, which is a much newer chip, there are a lot more things that they felt it was capable of, right? So they tackled the extended version of the specification, where they were able to break out more things.
there
right?
was also developer demand for, let's say, an Ethernet port on there, and it was very hard to fit that into the original version of the specification. So people are experimenting with that extended version there.
And the 820 is going to be enable lots of powerful things, right?
Oh yeah, that's
it's going
a
to be
very
a great
powerful
board.
chip.
It's going to be a very important one, right?
So the 820 is in some of the flagship phone models of this year. So it's a very recent chip, and it's a very powerful chip.
And that's the thing. ARM in general has been designed over the last decades, optimized kind of for phones. And
Yes.
so that's the one you have to take. You have to take the latest phone processor and do all kinds of development around it.
So the CE family of chips, it's primarily mobile chips. So everything on here was basically designed for mobile phones, and they're trying to get that into a developer form factor on these boards. The IE form factor, so these are the MCUs, the microcontrollers. That's the Cortex M series, and there's a lot more vendors in this market.
So what are we looking at here, for example?
So the first one here was a carbon board. We designed this. It's got an STM32, so ST Microelectronics 32 and F4 series of microcontroller. It's also got a Nordic NRF51 as a Bluetooth LE transport.
Yeah, if you'd recall, this one was actually announced in Last Connect, September of last year. It did its showcase, and then some of our engineers did a really cool demo on stage during the keynote.
So what's the idea with those you call it IoT boards, or so what's the idea of? Is there standard
So the
spec
IoT,
here?
so the IoT spec also has two versions of the specification. One of them being your basic IoT sensor boards. So it's basically where you plug in your sensors and you relay data back to the cloud. And then there's the gateway version of the spec. That could be more of the Cortex A series of processors on there, and that would be your relay to the cloud. So the Carbon, for example, is a version of the IE spec where you just connect sensors on there, and it has BLE transport back to your gateway.
They were showing at the keynote. They were showing. What do you call it?
Zephyr.
Zephyr. And this runs on there?
Yes. So these boards, I mean, the SoCs, the microcontrollers on here, these have kilobytes of memory and kilobytes of flash. So Linux cannot run, in its current form, Linux cannot run on these processors.
And Zephyr is a new open source system?
So Zephyr is an RTOS that's currently being managed by Linux Foundation, and Linaro is now a member of the Zephyr steering committee, and so we are working with Zephyr upstream to get Zephyr to the point where. So I like to call Zephyr the Linux of microcontrollers, in the sense that it should have the same sort of community, the same sort of meritocracy, if you may, that Linux does for development of open source real-time operating systems on microcontrollers.
So 96Board is quite popular, what's called platform, community. There's lots of SoC vendors shipping or preparing. At the keynote they were talking about 30 in development. So that's there's a big future there.
You actually wanted to talk about that a little bit. I mean, in the case of these boards that we actually have here, right? So you can see the MediaTek X20. This was released not too long ago. And then, as you saw in the keynote yesterday, they already have the next board planned and released, right? So the SoC vendors are definitely seeing value add in creating 96 boards around their chips. So
they can easily update to X25 and X30, and they just put the chip in basically nearly.
Yeah, so what we're seeing is that initially the plans were just one board, maybe try out an experimental 96 board. Now people are announcing roadmaps of boards. So they want 96 boards across a plethora of form factors and across a range of SoCs at different price points.
So that would be MediaTek supporting 96 boards. It's partly MediaTek supporting here, right? Not just Archimind and.
So both models work just fine. So in some cases, ODMs are saying that this is a very interesting form factor, and we have an interesting SoC we want to put on there, and so they're doing it. Arrow is doing some of that, and then in some cases, the SoC vendors are saying that we want, instead of doing our own developer board, which used to be like a few $1,000s earlier, they want to try out this new form factor and work with the board vendor and maybe share costs there.
And but then there's a question about shipping boards and then support, having software support. So what's being done in making sure that the board has everything people would want to have?
So it's actually very interesting. So another kind of aspect of the community growing and very rapidly is that you're starting to see, folks over at Canonical wanting to put their operating systems on 96 boards. So I mean, we didn't request this, we didn't ask for it, but now we have Ubuntu Core running on the Dragon Board 410C. They're already talking about adapting Ubuntu Core to other 96 boards. All right, so I mean, you're starting to see all of these developers wanting to put their operating systems on these boards.
So one of the reasons I think is the cost. I mean, getting these to under the $100 price point for the mobile chips, and I'm guessing it's the $20 to $30 price point for the IoT boards. It's very easy and very cheap for people to experiment with it. And it's not a very expensive investment in trying to port something new to this board. And the fact that SoC vendors are putting their latest chips on this platform, on this vehicle, that makes it more attractive, because now people have the latest SoCs from. I mean, some of these, the X20. I mean, this is shipping in current phones. The 820C is shipping in current phones. So these are not end-of-life SoCs. These are SoCs that are being shipped in mass volumes today, and people are wanting to put that on developer boards. So that makes it very attractive.
Yeah, I wanted to point out something else really cool, and we haven't really focused on these yet, but here in front we have a bunch of these mezzanine boards, and this isn't even half of them, right? But the interesting fact about these mezzanine boards is that, for the most part, they're capable of essentially plugging on to any of these. If they're designed around the specification, then they should, in essence, be capable of transporting
and
across.
What kind of thing can they do?
So that's another interesting fact about these. So essentially what you want to do is, if you're designing a mezzanine board, you're breaking out a particular functionality that you're interested in. So in the case of the Dragon Board 410C, we have an audio mezzanine right here. This was made by Arrow, and you can actually buy it right now on their site. This was designed to break out the analog expansion header, as well as some other features that they felt that they wanted on the board, but most specifically the analog expansion header on the Dragon Board 410C. You also have this one, and this one I think is one of the most interesting ones so far. There was some folks up in, I think it was San Jose or San Francisco. AI Star Vision is what they're calling themselves, and they're upside down. And they're calling this board the AI Star Vision MIPI adapter, right? They wanted a camera on their Dragon Board 410C. And so what they did is they went out and designed a mezzanine board just because they wanted that functionality. So they designed this, and now they're selling it on eBay at cost, because they just want people to take part in their efforts as well. And they just joined the 96Boards community and went with it. So
right now there's, for example, Android support for sure everywhere, but there's what kind of work are you doing to make sure that all these boards get instant software access, or super fast, not instant maybe?
So that is, I think a lot of that depends on what the goals of the members are. In some cases, they're happy with just Android support because they're targeting just that audience. In other cases, we are seeing that vendors want multiple operating systems supported to cater to other types of hobbyists. So, for example, Qualcomm has Ubuntu, Debian, Open Embedded, and even Windows 10 Core running on their boards, because they want to basically capture the entire market, regardless of what operating system people choose to run.
And they have free Arduino, right? Sometimes the GPU driver kind
Yes.
of blocks are an issue, right?
So that's one of the unique points of the Qualcomm chip. So it's actually got a reverse engineered open graphics driver. And so people who want the entire stack open, entire software stack open, sometimes prefer that because they are able to fix bugs a lot easier because they can look at the code.
And
Yeah.
this is something that's required to be done through Linaro, right? Linaro is all the ARM SoCs working on Linux and ARM, so this is why this is being done. The 96-board project is hosted at Linaro.
Yeah, so I mean, in essence, what we're looking at is when you do release a 96 boards, there is a process that you have to go through, right? And the ones you're looking at here, for the most part, have gone through that process, and we will stand by them, right? If we're looking, for instance, in the case, and this is in the uniqueness and how boards stand out from one another, we were just talking about the Dragon board and how they wanted to put all these operating systems on their board. Well, the Bubblegum, for instance, chose to adapt Android Remix, right? So Bubblegum is one of the only boards that I've seen run Android Remix on it. Then you have MediaTek, which is right now only running Android. However, in the future, they might want to run something else.
So Remix, this is the Actions CPU?
Yeah, so this is with the Action Semi CPU. And you know, by the way, you can find all of these boards on 96boards.org, right? So also, hopefully in the description of this video, we'll have a nice a layout of links for you to visit.
One thing I'd like to point out though, that a lot of this is driven by the members, by the vendors themselves. We are only custodians of the specification. So we've worked with the various vendors and tried to come up with a spec. It's not perfect, no spec ever is, but we only look after the specification. People are putting in innovation. They are finding ways to extend the spec beyond what was planned for, and that's perfect because that leads to the evolution of the spec. I mean, one of the things that I'm going to be working on this year is collect more information on what the next version of the specification, call it a 1.1, call it a 2.0, what would that look like, because technology is evolving. I mean, we're going from USB Type A connectors to where USB-C and USB 3.0 is going to be universal. Maybe it's time to change those connectors out.
And USB-C can be used for Ethernet and HDMI and DisplayPort and everything?
So I was just talking to someone yesterday. I could get rid of all of this if I went to USB-C, because you could do display, I could do all your peripherals here, I could even do power. So I could get rid of all of this with USB Type-C.
Just one or 2 or 3 connectors.
Exactly,
Depends.
but now we have to work out the details. I mean, we have to work out what has to be mandatory, because there's still peripherals out there that are Type A. We don't want to force people to just upgrade everything because we changed all the connectors on there.
So you can't force everybody to make open source GPU drivers and support every type of Linux and everything, but if it gets super popular, it might encourage them to say, hey, we definitely need to be providing a very cool Ubuntu and every kind of Linux.
I think that's at some point vendors will start realizing in terms of, I think it's about consumers voting with their wallets at that point on what they consider important. If consumer consider open source graphics drivers important, they'll vote with their wallets.
And I think I've even seen on there, some people are taking 96 boards but modifying it and making something that's maybe not covering the specs, but they add stuff, or like I think Intel has some chips and something that looks like a 96 boards.
So there are, and I think the one you're talking about is the Gumsticks Nadana. And yes, that is a board, and it's more so, I would say, a base board where you plug in.
It's a SOM.
Yeah, so a SOM receiver, right, or something like that. Yeah, but you would plug in their Intel Joule, and then you would be running on the 96 board specification. So essentially, the footprint of the board is what is the 96 boards. However, until they go through various steps, we can't necessarily call it a 96 boards until they go through necessary steps.
It's inspired.
It's
by
inspired.
What you're doing.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
that's what you're doing. You're also inspiring the industry to accelerate innovation in the ARM Linux space, right?
We hope so.
All right. Cool. So looking forward to more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, this year is going to be action-packed. I think we've got a very exciting lineup of boards. I mean, some of this is public information. We've got people putting FPGAs on these boards. That should be announced. I mean, once they go through the whole compliance process, they should go up on the website. But
And for example, here you're handing them out to all the engineers, and there should be just more of that, where everybody gets access to these and contributes.
So at the last Connect, we actually handed out 400 carbons to see what people would do with it. I mean, so every attendee got a carbon board.
All right.
Yeah, I wanted to add one more thing also, is on open hours, we actually go through a lot of these different boards and create all sorts of really cool demos. And we were just talking about the Gumsticks and the Donna. We're going to be having them back on open hours very soon to hopefully demo that board, right? We're going to get to see what it's capable of, which I'm actually very interested in. And then also they have an IoT board as well using the 96 board specification called the Radium. So it's interesting. I would suggest checking it out. They have a website, gumsticks.com, and with an X. So definitely fun stuff. Stay tuned on open hours for some of that cool
And
stuff.
Intel is welcome to join. And
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is not just ARM specific. The specification is SoC agnostic.
Yeah.